Welcome everyone. Today we're going to be chatting all things intranet and AI. As you're jumping in, please do feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, share about your name, where you're joining us from, and maybe what you're hoping to get out of the discussion in today's session. Just while we're running through kind of more of the formal parts of the presentation, if you can just remain on mute, and we'll give you a prompt if you'd like to jump in with anything as we run throughout today. I'll kick off by introducing our speakers for the session today. So just very quickly, my name's Emily. I work with SWOOP as our Global Head of Growth and Marketing, and I'm also joined by my colleagues, Kjaer, who is our SWOOP Analytics CEO and co-founder. And we also are joined by Matt Dodd, and Matt is our Product Director at SWOOP Analytics as well. We also have Gemma Saint on the call. Gemma looks after all of our wonderful customers. So if you have any questions about the SWOOP dashboards, then Gemma is your go-to. But I think I'd also just like to say, we always like to make these sessions as interactive as possible. So if you have any questions throughout, please feel free to pop any thoughts, any of your own experiences, anything you'd like to share. Please do feel free to pop it in the chat, or if you want to put anything directly into the Q&A, feel free to do so as well. We'll try our very best to get to all of the questions as we go through. We also have a few poll questions as well that we'll run throughout today. Sometimes the polls can be a bit hit and miss with who can access them. So if you can't see them, then please also feel free to share a little bit more about your experiences in the chat. But otherwise, let's jump into what we'll be covering as a part of today's session. So today we're going to start by looking at how employers are actually using AI alongside their intranets today. And we're going to do that by looking at a lot of our latest benchmarking data. We're going to dive into what's really happening on the ground when it comes to how ready intranets actually are for AI. And then we'll talk about the structural and governance foundations that AI depends on and why they matter so much. From there, we'll share some practical steps so that you can take those on board to hopefully improve usability, engagement, and AI readiness across your intranet. And then we will be introducing our new AI Readiness Index, which if you have a SWOOP dashboard, a SWOOP for SharePoint dashboard in particular, you'll actually be able to go in and access these insights as of today. If you don't have access to SWOOP, then we'll give you a few tips and a few ways to get started as we go through today. Also, very exciting, if you do stick around towards the end of today's session, we have a bit of a ticket giveaway. This is, I feel like, something a little bit new and fresh that we haven't really tested out before on webinars. So let's see how we go. We have 5 tickets to give away to Intranet Reloaded Berlin. So in the meantime, or just in the background while we're going through, check your calendars, 29th to the 30th of June, see if you're free. And if you'd like to come along and snag a free ticket, then please do stick around and we'll have a quick, we'll have a spinning wheel. It's very interactive, so get excited for that at the end. But let's jump into things. And I'm thinking let's kick off with a bit of a question for you all to reflect upon as a starting point. So we'll see what the baseline is for all of us here on the session today. This one isn't necessarily a poll question, but I'd love to just hear any specific insights that you have in the chat. So do you currently have AI running on your intranet? It could be a really simple yes, simple no. Maybe it's a bit of a work in progress. Share a little bit about where you're up to. Kai, I'm also wondering, could we clarify what we mean by AI running on the intranet? What exactly do we mean by this?
Yeah, it's a bit vague, isn't it? What does it mean? We kept it deliberately vague to sort of not constrain you too much. So are you playing around with some SharePoint agents? Do you have another thing, some other AI thing that sits on top of your intranet, sort of ingest the content? Those are the kind of things we're looking for to see whether that's something you're doing. So put the comments in the chat. You might also say, we haven't got anything on our intranet. That's fine too. But if you're playing around with Copilot and agents or other things, let us know. And we can start to see that there are some playing around with Copilot. Unsurprisingly, I might say. So are we?
Yep, definitely some people learning, people progressing.
Yes, it's wonderful. Thank you for all of you. Yeah, yeah. It looks very much like it's using what you have, which is probably the Copilot agents. If you are playing with the one that are specifically the SharePoint agents, that let us know that as well. But I think you do have a follow-up question, right, Emily? Just diving in a little bit more into this.
Yes. I could see that there are a few people who had mentioned that they're running trials, so maybe like a bit of a work in progress still. But what I'm going to put on the screen here, this one actually is a poll. So just give me a moment and I will launch this one as we go. So how would you describe the current stage of AI adoption for your intranet? So we have a few different options that will pop up on the screen here. So you've got no plans, no activity just yet. Maybe you've got some early research and some internal conversations happening around it, and then all the way through to AI is well established and delivering value. We actually ran this session a little bit earlier on for the APAC region. I feel like the majority of the results were sitting in the first 2 stages around no plans or early research. I'm really interested to see if there's any variation regionally as well. Let's see. So the responses coming in so far, it looks like the vast majority are still in the early research, internal conversation stage. Some people running a pilot, of course. I think that, or they're planning to run a bit of a trial, which I think also is reflective of the previous question we had and some of the insights shared in the chat. Still a few people with no plans or activity. 1%. AI is well established and delivering value. Feel like these are the people that I want to hear from. I would love to have them potentially presenting at a future webinar or perhaps a SharePoint festival, I'm thinking. Kjaer and Matt, like, do these sorts of responses where they're sitting, do these surprise us, or are these what we're pretty much expecting?
No. Yeah. I have a sense that it's, I think most of the people on the call here today do represent, fairly large, medium to large sized organizations. And you can't just, fling something on without going through like a lot of testing and building a business cases and, doing that. So I think it makes sense. Don't you agree, Matt? And that's kind of like that build curve sits in the early part, right? I think that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think, I'm certainly seeing comments as well in the chat, obviously with the sort of GDRP, other things that are quite a lot stronger in Europe than in an APAC. I think that is something where you need to do that research and initial conversation, and that might be a longer conversation. But hopefully, some of the things we'll go through today will maybe help with where that sits. And I think that's the advantage of what we're talking about, particularly about it being AI, where your boundary is very much the intranet. And I can just spot there is someone with their hand up, Matthew. If you just want to check.
Yeah, sorry. Hopefully it's okay to ask a question.
Yeah, jump in.
So we're currently on classic SharePoint, and we've got a project this year to move us into modern. So that's going to be coming up over the next few months. So at board level in our firm, they say that AI needs to be at the core of our intranet on modern intranet. But I think there's a bit of apprehension because a lot of people are like, well, what does that really mean in practice, sort of thing. So I know obviously you can use and create Copilot agents and you can embed the agent links on page, but I think there's a lot of noise around, as I say, AI needs to be at the kind of core at the forefront of the internet, but what does that really mean? Is it just agents, or it's like, I think it's, as I say, there's a bit of apprehension from people that are involved, like, are we going to be, applying this correctly? Is it good enough, or are we not doing enough sort of thing. So it would be interesting to kind of see and know what people are doing just now, so I can kind of take that on board.
Yeah. No, well, I think hopefully we'll touch on some of those things as we go through. There's yeah, and we can loop back to that at the end, and if there's any other questions, we can hopefully have given you something from some food for thought.
Brilliant, thank you.
Definitely. And I think even just having a look at those poll results and seeing where, you know, all of your peers are currently sitting with this as well, I think there can be a bit of that feeling that, you know, oh, everyone's so far ahead on that adoption curve as well. So maybe if it also just gives everyone a bit of peace of mind that we do all still have quite a way to go. But yeah, of course, hopefully as we go through today, we'll give you some more insights on how to prepare and how to kind of take on what's next when it comes to AI for intranets as well. But in saying that, what I'd like to do is go in and have a look at some of the benchmarks at the moment for when we're looking at AI, this concept of AI readiness. So when we talk about AI readiness, it's really important to be, like, we want to be upfront about where intranets are sitting today. And based on our 2025 SharePoint intranet benchmarking report, what we can see in the data, there's still quite a way to go. So that kind of sense that we're feeling as a part of the poll results, I think it also quite nicely translates to what we're actually seeing in the data. So this insight, it's not based on assumption, it's based on real usage data. And what you're seeing on the screen here is based on real life behaviours from over 230,000 intranet visitors. It's analysis of about 160,000 intranet pages, and we're looking across 28 organisations as well. And the outcomes from this analysis is exactly why we created the AI Readiness Index, which you can now access within a SWOOP dashboard. But it's a great way to give organisations a practical way to understand how prepared their intranet content is for AI. And what's interesting is we didn't actually have to start too much from scratch when it comes to this concept of defining AI readiness and how we measure it. Many of the signals that we need were actually already present in the way that we're measuring intranets in SWOOP for SharePoint, and that scoring system we call our health scores. So just a bit of background on how we're measuring this and how we break it down. There's 3 different pillars that we look at, and later on in today's session, Matt's going to go in a lot more detail around this, but essentially we're looking at these pillars of content readiness, engagement readiness, and search effectiveness. So for content effectiveness, AI is only as good as the content that sits behind it. So if the content is outdated, if it's poorly maintained, or maybe it's owned by people who are no longer working in the organization, it becomes very unreliable very quickly. If we're looking at engagement effectiveness, it's looking at if people are engaging with the content. So if content is actually being used and if it's being read, and in that case, we would say there's a higher likelihood of that content actually being useful. On the flip side, if content is unused, then it tends to signal lower value, even if it is technically available. And then for search effectiveness, this is where we'd be drilling into things like high exit rates. We're looking at failed searches, and this gives us a really clear indication as if there are any gaps in content, or if it needs to be reviewed in terms of how it's structured, how it's tagged, etc. So if search is struggling, then AI is going to struggle too, because it's drawing from the same foundation. But what we found as a part of the benchmarking study is that the average weighted AI readiness index across the organizations that we measured, it was sitting at a score of 51.1 out of 100. And if you had to put a goal against where we'd suggest that you should ideally be sitting, we would say a score of above 54 would be the place that it'd actually sit you within the top 20% of performers when we look at this index. So with employees, turning to chatbots instead of traditional search, and organizations experimenting with intranet chatbots, we can, see that again from the poll results. If these bots give bad advice or outdated answers, then trust in the intranet and kind of, I guess, a flow-on effect to other digital tools that you might be using more broadly, that starts to erode. So in terms of the how and some of the practical ways that we would suggest measuring this and improving this over time, it's by focusing on content quality and structure. And the best way for us to do that, I guess, first and foremost, and I guess you're quite lucky if you're running a SWOOP dashboard at the moment, but it would be through looking at things like the health score in SWOOP for SharePoint. And that's going to give you that really clear evidence-based view of how well your content is supported for AI. So that health score looks at things like, clarity and structure, findability, consistency, all of those fundamentals that AI really relies on to generate those accurate responses. And improving that score, it's not necessarily about creating more and more content. It's about reflecting and improving what you already have there. And a really key part of that, of course, is educating content editors on how to write for AI. And we're going to have a conversation a bit later about who we should be writing for now if it comes to writing for AI. Should we be writing for humans? Should we be writing for both? We'll get into that a little bit later. But we also find that the same principles also help employees, if you are writing for AI as well. So using clear language, using consistent terminology, making sure that all of your content is based in fact. And, when it's well written and well structured, then of course AI can also interpret it much more reliably. And it reduces that risk of misinformation being shared or having poor quality answers shared via AI as well. So as we mentioned, strong starting goal for AI readiness is a score of 54 or above. That gives you something really tangible to work toward and see how you're improving that over time. But I think the main thing as well around this, whenever we're looking at content and content quality and how that impacts AI readiness, it's an ongoing discipline, right? It's not just kind of like we've got AI readiness sorted today and now we can move ahead. You need to be consistently looking at quality, those clear standards, making sure that continuous measurement is happening. What I thought I might do, just to kind of show you how this works in action, I'm wondering if we could just totally expose SWOOP as a company when it comes to our level of AI readiness. Kjaer, do you want to maybe do a quick share and show the audience how they can find the AI readiness score and what it looks like for SWOOP, if we want to share?
Yes, I know we talked about this, but so people, so this is a bit like, if you ask the plumber, their pipes and their own house, they always leak, right? And the hairdressers, kids have never, nice haircuts. Anyway, so I'm going to show you this within SWOOP. So we have an intranet, but it's not perfect either. Is that in relief to hear? I hope it is. So this is SWOOP for SharePoint, and there's, as Emily talked about, there's a health score. And ours is 62. That's pretty good. It's not spectacular, but it's pretty good. But there are elements of this health score that takes into account things like spelling mistakes that AI doesn't really care about as much. So it's not, you can't just use the health score to assess AI readiness. But Emily went through kind of the components that make up our AI readiness score. So I'm just going to scroll down to the bottom down here and show you what ours looks like. So it's 57, which is bordering on acceptable. It does have this attention. It needs to get up to I think the threshold is 60 before we can sort of, it gets a good mark. So I know what we need to do, but so we're getting there, and you can sort of see. So the good thing is that right now you can see on the left-hand side, I'm at the intranet level. We can go in and look at particular sites and sort of get a sense of what the AI readiness is within particular sites, and where we sort of have more work to do than in other places.
Thank you for totally exposing us, Kjaer. It's not too bad though. It's above that threshold that we recommend, as you say. Yes. So we're not too concerned about it. But I'm just thinking, if anyone is interested in seeing more about the AI readiness score, the AI Readiness Index in action, if you're not currently using SWOOP, highly recommend booking some time with Kjaer to go through in a little bit more detail. Kjaer can show you how you can set this up and see for your own intranet as well. If you're a current SWOOP customer and you haven't had a chance to look at this either, Gemma would love to talk to you as well and run through in a little bit more detail. Gemma will show you how to find it, how to use the number. And yeah, we'd love to hear a little bit more about how organizations are using this score in practice as well. I'll also mention we have also updated one of our success guides, which is getting your intranet ready for AI. It's a free download. We might just pop the link to that in the chat as well so that you can access it. But I'll just give you all a moment there if you wanted to access via the QR code. We'll make sure we share that link with you in just a moment. Now, the next question that I would like for us to get into is how much of your intranet is ready for AI? This one will be a poll question, so just bear with me and I will launch this one in just a moment. Let me close off the previous one as well, and I'm going to launch our next one. So again, I'm going to give you a few options for you to share. So how much of your intranet is ready for AI? Hardly any content at all. Perhaps you've got some small pockets that are ready, a little bit more, maybe most of it's ready. Or is there anyone who's confident enough to say, almost everything is ready and we've done it? Give you all a moment to share if you can see the poll. If not, maybe just share some extra insights in the chat if you would like to.
Small pockets looks like it's the runaway winner at the moment. Oh, not runaway really, is it? It's only 45%. But it's certainly everything falls in the like with the initiatives, right? In the first like 3 options is where we find like I think 96% of the answers.
But again, there are a few people there who feel like most areas are ready. The part about small pockets too, like it's, you know, again, quite consistent with what we talk about with those best practice and actions, you know, starting small and focusing in on, specific bundle of content just to get started, I think is a really good point to kick things off.
Yeah.
I don't think these answers are wildly surprising though. No. I think also based on some of the previous responses. So again, you're not alone. If you feel like this is, a big ambitious task in front of you, I feel like many of us are in the same boat. So please do feel free to continue sharing insights or experiences, challenges that you may be facing as well in the chat. But I think, we've just had a really good discussion and we've shared a little bit more about how much content is ready for AI. But I know, Kjaer, you've been running a bit of an experiment in the background.
Yes, I have. And so this whole thing about AI readiness, I think there's one, I think it was Juliet who said in the chat, like, I don't know what it means for content to be ready with a nice smiley face. So that was actually, in all seriousness, a question that we sat down and asked ourselves when we wrote the benchmarking report last year. And our chief scientist, Dr. Laurie Lockley, constructed an experiment, which I think is fantastic. I'm going to share with you what that entailed. But before I go into the experiment, because we ran an experiment of good content in AI versus bad content. And we wanted to test how bots are answering when you use good or bad content. But I just want to step back a little bit and just make sure that we understand how these bots work, specifically like when we're talking intranet content. So when you bring your own content to the bot, and not when you're using ChatGPT or Claude or Copilot, you're not the one for work, but the general Copilot that just looks at the internet. So when you have these bots that are grounded in specific content, this is how they work. So if you see over on the left-hand side of the slide, there's an employee who asks the question, what is our policy for remote work? Can you help? Now, that's the question the bot is answering. And you've seen this when you've been using Copilot or some of the other ones. It's thinking a bit, working, preparing answers or whatever. And what's actually happening behind the scenes when that is going on is the following. The chatbots will try to sort of decipher what it was you meant by that question. So unlike a traditional intranet search where it'll just start looking for the terms, the AI component of this is far more sophisticated. It'll translate your search query, which it really is, into a set of different intents. So it'll sort of replace some of the words, formulate it quite differently, construct 3 or 4 different ways to say something of what it was you were searching for, you were asking for. And then it'll take that and then it'll search in your sources. So here I've called them company source content. So those are the information on your intranet that you're sort of pointing the intranet bot to. And some of the most popular types of information is some of the things I've put in here, policies of various forms, guidelines, examples, templates, presentations, or whatever it is. I've put in news. We'll come back to maybe why news is not such a great idea to have in here, but we'll come back to that. So what's happened is you take this different intent and then it's searching through all this content and saying, can I find anything about remote work and policies? And then it's finding all these little bits and pieces, sentences, paragraphs where I think it can find the answer. And then it'll prioritize these search results. And it's using a bunch of different parameters. All this gets quite complex and sophisticated, but it'll try and sort of orchestrate which ones are the most important ones of all the things that I found. And then it'll say, these are the chunks of text I found. Then it'll basically use this large language model that can construct a sentence. And that's the experience that we have when we talk to these chatbots, that they're answering back in a language that feels very human. So it'll construct a response using the large language model to speak whatever language you're interested in. And then it'll provide the answer over to us as an employee, as you're seeing over on the left-hand side. So what we wanted to do, we wanted to find out, to give 2 examples, right? I'm going to show you the question that we asked the bot, but first I'm going to show you the 2 examples of high quality and low quality content. So here's the high quality one, and we're just scrolling quickly past it just so you can sort of glaze over and sort of roughly get a sense of how it's laid out. There are headings, there are some subheadings, there's some bullet points. You can see it's quite nicely laid out. Even for us as human beings, this would probably be quite a pleasing document to read. There are even case studies and examples in it, right? So that's how it's laid out. Guiding principles, different things. So it's detailed.
I think also back to like with some of the questions in the chat as well about like what does it mean if like if content is ready, like these are kind of like the real life examples, right?
Well, this one is that I'm pointing to here is one that is ready. So first of all, I should say that I assume in this case here that this content is factual, correct, updated, approved, signed off. This is the company policy to working flexibly. And as I said, all on the governance side, it's been approved, vetted, all that. But it's also detailed, well written, and well structured. So it ticks the marks for being this is ready for the chatbot to consume. But let's go to the next one and have a look at one. And let's say that this one was also vetted, signed off, right? But in this case, as you can see, it is a lot shorter. It's actually not very well written. We had to construct also this, so it was like pretty vague. So it didn't really answer all the questions that people might have to questions about remote work. But sometimes when the legal teams look at things, they don't really want to be too specific because they don't want to say anything wrong. So they sort of leave things a bit up to interpretation. So in this case here, no headings, no sections, it's vague. And there's lots of spelling mistakes. We found out the spelling mistakes actually doesn't really matter. Now, so this is the one that represents poor or low AI readiness. Now, let's look at the question we asked. So the question we asked, these 2 chatbots, one was grounded or trained. Trained in is not the technically correct term, so I'll use grounded. One was grounded in the high quality document, and one was grounded in the low quality, the low readiness document. And we asked the same question. I have a request from staff members to work flexibly. The majority are still working parents who rely on relatives for childcare. I'm inclined to grant hybrid arrangement, but unsure how to go about it. Can you provide guidance? Now, first of all, just check out how much extra additional information we get from this. Can you imagine someone was searching on the intranet for this in the old days? What do you think they would have put in the search box? Hybrid work, flexible work, policy or something, and you wouldn't have a clue why they were searching for that. But here, look at how rich that is. That also helps the AI go hunting for things because it understands much better what I'm trying to find out. Now, let's look at the two responses the chatbots gave, right? I know there's a lot of text here. You don't have to read it. Just look at this and see they're roughly the same amount of words, right? Like in terms of the detail of the answer. So it didn't really matter whether we had a very detailed, complete document or we had one that was sort of quite sort of short. The bot provides the same level of answer. It's structured roughly the same way. It's got from but consider this, here 5 or 6 things you need to consider. The one that's over on the left-hand side, that was the one where the chatbot is grounded in a high-quality document. We then wanted to test how well the answer that the bot provided matched the guideline that is in the document. And the answer to that was 9 out of 10. So you have a high-quality document, and the answer the bot provides is actually very good. So we can have high confidence in the answer that the bot provides. Now let's have a look at the other one with low AI readiness. So we also there checked how confident can we be that the answer we see here on the screen, that for the employee, when you look at it, it looks pretty much the same in terms of the answer, and like it looks as I can't really tell the difference, right, between these. They both look credible to me. Now let's have a look at what the confidence score of this is. It's 6 out of 10. Now, what does that mean? It means that when we compare the answer with the information that was in the document that the bot is grounded in, it's actually not very accurate, but it looks accurate. So if you look at, maybe you can just see it behind where it says 6 out of 10. Point number 5 talks to this trial period. Consider a trial period, it says. There was no mention of a trial period in this source file for low AI readiness. But what happens is that the bot will try and please you. It'll try and sort of fill in the gaps. And if it hasn't got the exact right answer, it'll just add stuff. It's not just hallucination, because sometimes you'll probably, you work out that they're clearly wrong. The problem here is that if you're an average employee looking at this, the reply based on low readiness doesn't actually look wrong, right? What is you call this something, Matt? You have a nice
term. It's like the credibility trap.
The credibility trap, yes.
It looks like it's credible, so you assume it is, and it's also kind of linked in. It's the I guess it's the technical equivalent of the Dunning-Kruger effect, which was this idea about people who feel really overconfident will rank their skills at something a lot higher than someone who's actually an expert in their field. They'll kind of go, well, I think I'm quite good, but it's that kind of false confidence to a big degree.
So what we got to be very careful of here, right, is that those of you on the call that own intranet content, like, it is really important that the content that we have, that we have built the bots upon, that is factually correct, as Emily said. It is signed off, it is comprehensive, and also I understand why some of you, maybe now you'll say, I'm really glad we said that maybe only some of our content is AI ready. We should really make sure that our content, we have a good look at it, and run some of these trials, so we don't run into this risk that we launch a bot based on our intranet content, and then it gives an answer, and it might only be months after that we find out that the answer the bot provided wasn't actually quite right. So I hope you find that experiment. You can of course try to run these experiments yourselves as well, and see whether you get a different result or a similar result. But I think it does trigger a question for all of us, which, Emily, I think you have coming up, right? Which is something about how we write.
Yes. Should we be writing for humans or for AI? That's kind of off the back of some of these examples. I'm always pondering, like, should it be one or the other or both, or does writing for one benefit the other anyway? And I've also realized, like, in the chat as well, I feel like some of our attendees are also really keen to see some more of those examples of what high readiness versus what low readiness looks like. I'm wondering if we could even write a blog post or add some more examples together so that people can see it in action. But I would love to see if anyone has any thoughts in the chat around this particular question. I'm not running a poll on this one, but would love to hear anyone's thoughts around writing for humans or for AI.
And while you're thinking and you got your fingers sort of, ready at the keyboard, do you know that those of you that publish, and I don't think there's a lot of you publish content on SharePoint, that there is the ability to publish content in different languages. And, should there be an AI, special version of a page written for AI? So there's the one that the humans read, and then there's the one that AI consumes. So what do you reckon? Should we be writing for humans or AI? Both. Josh says, humans, of course. Yes, we're the final consumers.
Yeah. I think this is, I mean, this is where I get quite passionate. I do think that ultimately it is humans. But if we're doing it in the right way, then that's going to be actually beneficial for AI as well. I mean, it's very similar to 10, 15 years ago, we were having the same discussions around, do you write it for people or do you write it for search engine optimization? And a lot of the research at that time, and I think it's still valid, showed that if you write for humans, you'll get decent search engine results. But I think the same is true now for AI. I think there are things, then some concessions that we could make, maybe. For me, when I think about the content, we need to make sure that you're always building confidence, so that the content is accurate and up to date, which, if you're a person reading your normal intranet content right now, you'd want to know that it was accurate and up to date. But I also think where it really helps is around making sure that there is real clarity. So that might be including some extra things. And we've done this, Kjaer, haven't we, for some of our support articles, because we use AI to surface some of those answers. So sometimes it's actually adding extra content in to say what something isn't as much as what something is. So you can give some real examples around, this doesn't cover this thing, or it doesn't apply to these circumstances, rather than not putting it at all. So that completeness, and that, you want it to be comprehensive but not verbose. We had that chat, didn't we, Kjaer? And it's like, we don't need lots and lots of extra words, but we do want to make sure that content is complete, so that you can find the answer.
If you think about the example of an employee a policy in a particular area, we might just want to make it really short and sweet for the humans and say, like, here are the 5 points you need to know. And as we know that people are lazy. No, so lazy is not that's not the right word, but they are short on time, and you need to get to the point quick, right? So get to the point. But AI is really good at summarizing. So if we take all our content and sort of write it really, really short, which might suit the reader, it doesn't necessarily suit AI. So that's why Matt is saying we've actually had to build up some of our knowledge base articles to allow our AI agent, Dr. SWOOP, to be able to answer better. And some of those help desk articles are probably getting a little bit too long, for humans to bother to read all of them. Excellent.
Thanks everyone for sharing. Yes, I feel like there's a lot of passion coming through as well in the chat around this. So really appreciate everyone providing their insights and their thoughts on this topic. But I think it kind of leads us to looking at some of the new challenges that have emerged as well.
Yeah, I think there's some of this that we probably really need to start to get our head around. It's a really fair conclusion, is that we all, like everyone on the call here today, like most of us are in the early stages of this, right? Implementing, thinking about it, maybe just started. And therefore, You know, it's a bit like when you're building a document management system, the last thing you think about is like, how are we going to archive all our documents? You know, like it's because of that, oh, let's worry about that later. But the things I'm putting up here on the screen now is some of those things where you're going to go, oh, we have to worry about that later. But that later is not that far away. So prompt and answer accuracy. As we just saw, the bot might actually hallucinate or stitch together partial answers. And what do you do if you own that intranet bot, and it says yes, you can offer hybrid work to this employee, whereas HR might have said, well, you forgot to put in your comma, however, it must fit in with the rest of the team members or whatever it is. Then so this ability to trace the response back to its source and say, well, was that the right source it even referenced? And the person who's got the sources will say, I don't know, like the source is correct. Like I didn't, I didn't give the answer. Like my document is right. It's just it's not my accountability that the bot answered something different. So there's some things that you've got to be sure that you can trace these things. And that comes back also this thing about training and retraining the bot. What happens if someone changes the bot from running, I don't know, GPT 5.2 to Claude something else or Sonnet or something else, and suddenly the answers are slightly different? It might, prioritize these search indexes differently. When are we going to retrain the new content? Who makes sure that the knowledge base that the bot is relying on is up to date? So, and as I said, this thing about answer attribution accountability, who owns that? Who will say, I own the answer for that? And we don't have a situation where everyone goes like, oh, IT's boss. No, it's internal comms, it's your content. And someone says, I don't know, somewhere in between. But in all this, then this wonderful, exciting things happening as well. The ability to learn much more about what it is that people are trying to uncover on our intranet. You saw with that example I provided how much rich context we get for this flexible working policy and what they're trying to find out. So I think that's going to be something really, really interesting for us to find out what is it people are asking, so we can ensure that the content and the internet really meets the needs of our internal customers. And then, of course, there's lots of guardrails we need to put in place about ethics, security, control, privacy. But some of these things are actually not. Some of these things we have bumped into before. I think you can all recognize there's some of these things. And Matt, I mean, we know that, right? There's some of these things that are, this is not the first time we're bumping into this, right?
No, and I think this is the bit where again, going back to the idea of what we were doing for search engines 10 years ago, and a lot of the comments that I'm reading in the chat, that whatever it is you're basing it on content, so it does need to be accurate, up to date, and something that you can trust. And if you're not doing that, an AI on top of poor content is just going to give you poor answers. It's not. This is a moment, I guess, to sort of really go, right, well, if we're really serious about the future being people not reaching the end, that the content as an endpoint, but they're just using it as a source for a conversation, we still need to make it work well. And I think there's definitely some stuff in the comments there about, well, do we need to invest in making it perhaps look nice? But some of that I think will do, yes, because of structure. I think the structure will really help. And we've got to be careful, I think, as well, about how much we duplicate, what ownership there is. There were certainly comments there about, using the intranet as like your guide, and then having, deeper and rich information in the policies. That's great, but we just actually need to let those AI agents know that fact, so that they can put more weight perhaps on bringing out answers from deep within the policies than just giving you a surface answer that's from your intranet, your quick guide in your intranet. That feeds into that information architecture, and also, say, it relates to that metadata that you're putting on your content to help the AI models actually understand what's going on. And there was actually a really good point actually this morning in the session from that we had this morning around permissions and visibility, you know, things like Copilot not giving answers when pages are checked out or there's draft pages. We certainly had a participant saying that they were struggling because someone had created a draft page and therefore it was seen as unreliable content, even though it might just be, you know, in draft while someone's doing some work. And the people factor on this, I still can't get over the fact that, you know, Google came out in 2004, and you still see hordes of people that, you know, don't capitalize on all those things that you can do in Google, like nominate a site or use quotes to get an exact match. All of those things mean there's a lot of legwork to do. Writing prompts is not an easy thing necessarily. And yes, you can use AI to also help you write prompts, but they're all barriers to adoption and how complex they make. So again, the more that you can think about those things when you're setting up the AI to sit on top, I think the better, you know, making sure that you say, focus on the policy pages rather than on news, or whatever it is in that configuration will make a real difference.
Excellent. Now, I also wanted to make sure that we share some insights and actions and things to be able to try out or pay attention to after today's session. So as a part of our 2025 SharePoint Intranet benchmarking research, we asked intranet specialists, thought leaders and experts how AI is really impacting digital workplaces today. So big thank you to Sam, Frank, Sue, Esben, Jonas and Jesper just for sharing some of those insights that we've compiled together in the report. I think one of the most consistent messages that we heard from the experts is that AI isn't necessarily that cleanup tool. It's certainly I would say more so an amplifier of the things that already exist. So before expecting AI to deliver value, organizations need to address outdated content, duplication, pages that no longer serve a purpose. And what this means is also deleting what's no longer relevant, cleaning up what remains, and organizing content properly, just so that AI has something much more reliable to work with. And it also reinforces some of those longer standing intranet principles that I think were mainly highlighted by the likes of Sam and Sue in those expert insights. So strong content foundations should come before new technology. The practitioners also agree that AI quickly surfaces existing content issues rather than solving them. So outdated, duplicated, poor structured content becomes much more visible once AI starts generating answers. It acts as a bit more of a spotlight, whereas it, kind of, I think, leans a little bit more into highlighting those weaknesses. So it makes that intranet hygiene all the more important, and especially as we are experimenting more with chatbots, Copilot, etc. I think the main message as well is just kind of getting back to basics, essentially. So clear ownership, sensible naming conventions, having those archiving practices in place, and having well-managed permissions as well, I think is also something that supports more trustworthy outputs as well. So just to always keep in mind that when users lose trust in, our users will be losers if we don't pay attention to these insights from the experts. But when users lose trust in the AI responses, adoption will drop, and it will make governance more of an enabler and not a blocker. So things to keep in mind. I don't know how smooth that recovery was there, so apologies for that. And then secondly, a strong theme from the experts as well is that AI works not best as an assistant, and it does work best as an assistant, not as a replacement for human judgment. So it can be very useful for drafting, summarizing and refining language and reviewing that content at scale. And I think when we talk to lots of people across comms, like these are the things that they're relying on AI for most regularly. However, our practitioners and experts are also really clear that human insight is still so important and essential to ensure that accuracy, to ensure that it's relevant to your end users, and to make sure that organizational context is kept in place as well. I think lastly as well, I'll just mention that the experts also agree that organizations are still very much so in those early stages of AI readiness. Now, these are insights that were shared, I guess, more so towards like the start/halfway point of last year. We're currently crunching the numbers now for our 2026 SharePoint intranet benchmarking report. So I wonder if we'll see a little bit more movement of the dial as we drill into some of these numbers, and we'll be releasing that report in May this year. So we'll make sure we share a link with you to be able to access that. Now, Kjaer, I believe you have an example of like the reality of working through the intranet content to make sure it is ready.
Yeah, well, so the thing is, right, so intranets are big, aren't they? Like, and many of you said, all right, well, you know, only small pockets of this is really ready, or some pockets are ready. A few said most of it, or more than half, but most said not all of it. So we did this little calculation and said, well, all right, well, let's say we have 2,000 pages, and let's say that we spent a couple of hours on each page just making sure it is great, you know, high quality content, well written and all that. Well, I think you can say that that's just not going to happen, is it? Like, it's just not going to happen that we spend 4,000 hours, which is, you know, 2 full-time equivalent. You know, it's just not going to happen. So we will probably have to find a way of getting around this. And that's sort of where, yes, I'm biased, you know, but I do think the analytics part here can actually help you out to find out, well, which part of the intranet then can we have more confidence in, that'll help us, that if we do it over here, we're going to have more success than over there. And also maybe try to find those areas where we do have really old content. We do know from our benchmarking that, for instance, like if there's a lot of old news, maybe it's time to archive that so it's not get indexed as well. As you know, news is being published all the time, and typically on most intranets that if you are using it for news, then that can take up more content than the content pages, actually, the evergreen pages. So anyway, I think I think this is probably not a realistic path to go down, which is why, again, coming back to that AI Readiness Index that I know Matt is going to talk to us a bit about. But before, I know you said in the beginning, Emily, you said you had some about this Internet Reloaded conference, and you said you had some tickets to give away, and I'm sure people would have not forgotten about that.
Oh, sorry, I was just muted. Yes, so we have 5 tickets to give away today. The tickets are worth over €2,500. So like this is a fantastic conference to get along to. So happening towards the end of June, 29th to the 30th of June, over 2 days. Such fantastic sessions at this conference. You'll be able to connect with lots of other like-minded people. So getting the group here in person today, I think like that would be, I think, something really great. So the way that you can, I guess, enter to win one of these tickets, I'm just going to see how this works. So I'm launching just a quick poll. It's just like a word cloud. I think the way that I've set this up is that if you submit your name, I'm going to sort of bundle it together and I'll have a bit of a spinning wheel. So if you would like to win one of these tickets, I'll also just flag, if you are a consultant, one of our, you know, friends working for a consultancy, if you're working for a software company, I'll ask you to politely sit out of this one. We'd love to keep these tickets for people who are, you know, real practitioners and who would like the opportunity to hear these insights at the conference. So I'll give you all a moment to pop in your full names. Oh my gosh, these tickets are hotly contested. We've got lots of people entering. This is great. Excellent. So I'm going to close this off in a few. I'll keep it running in the background. And while that's happening, Matt, I'm going to hand to you to share a bit more about AI readiness.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, there's been lots of chat in the lots of chat about, you know, what do we mean by readiness? Is it something that's about people using AI to generate content? And obviously, hopefully you see, for what we're talking about in this context, we're not looking at that. That is something that's still sort of floating around what we do. But this is really about making sure that the content is well governed, is accurate, current, valid, up to date, really builds that confidence. I kind of see it as like, I've almost got like 3 C's almost. Like, we want the content to give people confidence. We want it to be clear and have the clarity so that it's easy understood by both people and obviously the models and the RAG searches that happen. And obviously we also want it to be comprehensive, have that completeness. So that gets all weighted together. We basically take our quality and experience scores. That gets put into our content readiness, which is sort of weighted as 60% of our AI readiness score. So very much focusing on those basic governance things being in place. We then look at an engagement readiness. So this is around is the content getting visitors? So it's almost a kind of social proof for your AI. If people are already using that on your intranet and they're accessing content, we use that as a signal for value. And because certainly things like Copilot are so closely linked with the Microsoft Graph, those sorts of things are being used in how that assesses some of its content. So we very much kind of think about engagement, usefulness, and using human signals for that. And then finally, the search effectiveness. Obviously, it's the way Kjaer explained it. It does do these big, complex searches. So if we have evidence from what we're looking at in our SWOOP for SharePoint product, that searches are either coming up with no results, or that searches are ending with users actively closing down their browser or exiting the intranet on a search results page, we look at that and we can say, well, okay, out of the searches that were committed in a site or on your intranet, what kind of proportion failed? And therefore, that might indicate some big gaps in your content. So that's kind of how we put that score together. It gets put out. It's available in our health dashboard, and then we have to say those rankings. Anything above 60 we see as being, good, and then anything below 40 is where we think there really does need to be a serious conversation about whether or not the content is governed enough or is effective enough to be to put AI across the top of it.
Fantastic.
So I hope that helps.
Thanks, Matt. So I just wanted to share with you, you can now access the details to register for our upcoming SharePoint Intranet Benchmarking Report. It'll be released around May. We'll make sure you have the links after today's session as well if you don't quite catch the QR code. We would also love to hear your thoughts about today's session. If you have any feedback, we would love to hear it. We always use it to inform future sessions as well. This feedback form will also be sent out in the next day or so. So while the insights are fresh, you can share a little bit more about what you thought. And then, of course, if you did want to learn a little bit more about the AI Readiness Index and maybe get a little bit of a sneak peek into how this works for your own organization, then please feel free to book a time with Kjaer to see this particular index in action. Or you can also reach out to Gemma if you're a current customer of SWOOP using the dashboards. Gemma can show you exactly how to find the AI Readiness Index and how you can make the most out of it. You can also download our intranet success guide, which is all about getting your intranet ready for AI, which I think will cover off a lot of the insights and actions we discussed today. But otherwise, thanks so much, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate all of your input.